Word Laos.
Welcome to Travel Talk, brought to you by the Hotel Guide, the global voice of luxury and boutique hospitality. Featuring Edward
Good morning,
Leos.
everybody. Edward Leos here, publisher of the Hotel Guide and your host of Travel Talk. I have a really great guest with me today, and I'm going to say, George, your first name, and I'm going to let you say your last name and introducing yourself because we were off screen and I was trying to practice and I kind of got it, but I was like, man, I'm not going on camera and messing up your last name. So, George, how are you doing today and where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from the beautiful island of Grenada in the Caribbean. Beautiful island, really authentic. I come from Greece personally myself, so my last name is a big fat Greek last name. It's a trademark, Vlachopoulos, but I make it easy for people to call me George.
And I appreciate you doing that. I am so thankful that you just let me call you George, and we went straight to first name basis here. So I'm excited to have you on the show today and talk a little bit about not only your role, but what you're doing with Six Senses. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are? And then we'll kind of chat a little bit about the property and what's going on there, maybe a little bit about leadership in luxury travel.
Sure. It's looking back to the career, right? 26 years. I started in 2000. I believe, my generation was the last, traditional hoteliers, generation. I come from Europe, Greece. I studied in Switzerland. So looking, back, my career, I think, has been saved working, with really distinct, luxury environments from really ultra remote, locations, destinations. I'm proud, to mention my first, posting of GM in Nihi Sumba in Indonesia back in time to what I call iconic, European, destinations like my home, Santorini, and now, for the last few years in the Caribbean. And I think looking, in a very retrospective way, what really connects everything is the experience, of transformation to the property and to my career, while going through. So brand identity, preparing, for all of those projects, I think over time, it has become looking to the hotels, not just as hotels offering, experiences, but looking them as assets holistically, how culture, how leadership, how preparing, these hotels for new, phase. Now, today, I'm in Grenada, as I mentioned. I've been for a while in the Caribbean. This is my third destination. I started off in Anguilla with Aubers. I moved on with St. Kitts under the Park Hyatt flag. And now I moved to Grenada with Six Senses under IHG, which is the same ownership group with my Park Hyatt experience. So I moved within, the portfolio of the owners.
Yeah.
I'm taking care both Six Senses La Sagesse, which is a very interesting project, the very first Six Senses property in the Americas. And I'm also leading the pre-opening of Intercontinental Grenada, which has been very, very interesting balance. You have, these two very different, philosophies, luxury philosophies, working in parallel, but at the same time, requiring different discipline operationally and different sensitivity to the brands.
Yeah, so I was reading up on that, and congrats on the new role and position. But tell me how you balance luxury and leadership and culture at both properties, because there's a uniqueness to them, but inherently, you touched on something earlier with regards to experience and how that begins. I'm seeing that hugely in the luxury and boutique space, but just across in general, experiential travel is just taken off big time. I think it always was there, but now it's being said what it is. Tell me how that goes between those two properties and how you go about being a leader about that.
Yeah, well, it's a loaded question, I would say, because it's all, we do. The strategy, here is exactly, balancing this. Now, culture, I would say, travels faster. Once you set, everything, right from the beginning, what are the non-negotiables with the team? Once there is, certainty of what, needs to be done, the team, aligns from the top. and then make it easy for you. But think of this: you have the very first Six Senses in the Americas. Paradoxically, the majority of the transient business for a Six Senses is from the US. So the anticipation of having Six Senses on the backyard, what we call the American market, right? It's huge. So I think what defines the Six Senses property here is the way we try to embed Caribbean culture to the overall brand culture, and I think this is the key for us to really create the global approach of Six Senses to a local sensitivity, and we do this with intention, because Grenada is not like Bahamas. Definitely is not like Anguilla, those most popular more popular destinations. So we try to do this with intentionality and creating the authentic culture, which I know it's been a cliche, but here the industry is not, the top industry is not hospitality. So creating that intention to the team, and taking them with you to deliver these experiences is a key. Now, as we lead the pre-opening for Intercontinental Granada, is a different type of luxury. The luxury that people would expect from a big brand with a big loyalty following. We're doing this with differentiation of the product, with rarity and exclusivity of how you enter. And I'm not sure how my peers and colleagues from the Americas will be happy me saying this, but I am very open. I think this is the very first integrated project of IHG for the first time after the acquisition of Six Senses in 2019, where the brand comes together under the IG flag with one integrated project, having an Intercontinental luxury hotel, which is going to spend a little over 1 million per key for 120 rooms, and then a project that has been completed come April 3 years now, and had spent 1.2 millions per key, 71 keys. So it's pretty unique, I think.
Now it does sound unique, and it does sound like there's some big anticipations there. For someone who knows the Six Senses brand, and now you're talking about the American market being closer to where this property is, what can they get? What can guests expect going into this year, or anything big that you have planned for the year or beyond that for this property?
Well, we, as I said, we had a slower ramp up for various reasons. We wanted to prepare Six Senses in a way that speaks Caribbean, and if you look, into the core of Six Senses as a culture, originates, from a Southeast Asian, background. Translating, that and the core pillars of such a strong, brand through a Caribbean platform is not an easy task. So it took, a little bit of time. With that, being said, we are now, in a position to take advantage of the platform of IHG. And as much as people, know when they go to Asia or Europe, Six Senses, you would be equally, surprised that the majority of the guests who now come to us, by 70%, they haven't been to another Six Senses, which surprises me, supremely. But we have, ramped up ourselves into the philosophy of Six Senses. We have adopted a wellness-focused way of how we do things. We look sustainability not just a marketing concept, but definitely an operational discipline, if I may say. And by doing so and involving the guest while we do it, is how things resonate with guests. So whenever we have a guest visiting here, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to meet myself and everybody else, when they come on the property. We like, to see the guests as part of our home, in a way. And let them know, how busy or not busy, active or inactive, they can be to those initiatives. I think it's a key for them, to choose what they want, to experience and how busy they want to be, during their vacation. So We have had, recently an amazing visiting practitioners program, which the brand itself has a plethora of candidates with really unique, skill sets,
Wow.
which ran all the way from November, back in November when we closed Q4, and it's going to run up to the end of May and June this year. And it has been received, so well, from the guests coming in, and finding someone who is doing acupuncture for your eyesight. We talk about acupuncture on the back usually, and all of
Yeah.
these things. So, offering, this type of experiences, is not easy, and is not easily, found in the Caribbean. So I'm very proud, about this.
No, it sounds like you're doing, and you guys got a great opportunity there to make your footprint and let it be known that how you're combining the uniqueness of not only the property but the area too. So that's some good stuff. Let's switch a little bit from the business side of things, and I always like to ask my guests some personal questions because we're a travel show, and people like to know where our guests have been. But two questions. One, tell me some of your favorite travel destinations that you've been to, and then we all have our bucket list. What are some of your bucket list travel spots that you like to try out?
Well, I don't know, if I did a great job to describe, my journey in numbers so far. This is my 13th country in 3 continents, personally. I think I mentioned before Indonesia. Indonesia for me, goes back, is very fond, to my heart, for various reasons. I think it's unique culture. It's something, that every hospitality, leader wants, to be implicated with, because it's a pleasure to do so. I've been in Thailand, and it's deep to my heart because my twin boys were born, there, and it's an amazing place. And I can't not speak, about Santorini in my hometown, where I was there, with the bears back in time. I mean, the amount of architectural, distinctiveness, this place, has, and together, the unique culture over there in Santorini is one of the most iconic, southeastern Mediterranean, places.
Yeah.
Now, where I want to go, well, plenty of places, but I had to think, a little hard for this one. But Japan for me, is a destination I always want to go when I was in Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
There is a certain, appeal, to the discipline, to the natural, innate ability of offering emotional discipline, hospitality. I think every hospitality leader needs to have that experience. And I would like to go to Patagonia for some reason.
Nice.
I think I've spent too much time, into hotter environments, and I want to see, something different. And I think, this wild environment, this culture, that really is unique, and you're not going to find, somewhere else, is what, is appealing to me.
Now, that is actually an interesting place. You're the first person. Well, someone said Antarctica, but you're the first person that said Patagonia. And I actually just had a very good friend of mine that just got back from there. And the words he used to describe the area was awe-inspiring and solitude, and it's just the ruggedness of life right there. And so it does have that appeal to it, when you come from where we are, and, hustle and bustle of whatever city we're in, and seeing that area of the world is just unique in itself. So those are some great places for sure. We got a couple of minutes left here. What's the best way for people to find out about the properties? And then any last comments or thoughts with regards to either one of them?
Yeah, well, we're pretty straightforward. We have our own website under Six Senses. We have our own, exposure through the Intercontinental's, site. If you're not already, a member of our IHG, rewards membership, please be, because we give you enough, reasons to come, here and make it, value, for you. But ultimately, I want to say that I am personally, very excited. Come November or late Q, 2026, we're gonna have, this integrated, project between, two distinct, brands under one ownership, under one, flag of Intercontinental. And I really think, that's gonna create a lot of attention for Grenada, as a destination overall. We are not in the hustle and bustle, if I may say, and using your words, of Grenada. We chosen to be about 20, 25, minutes, away from that side, and that's done, with purpose, because we have, we're home to a small peninsula called La Sagesse, and I can see, the synergy of that integration come live on November Q4, and that excites me, profoundly. I'll be honest.
I'm excited about that as well. And it also leads me to believe that we're probably going to have you back on my podcast when that is unveiled for us to chat about it, and obviously being featured in our publication too. I think what you're doing, George, is wonderful. I love your leadership ideologies as well, and how you're implementing into the culture there on the properties. And I know you're going to have nothing but success like you've had in the past. But I want to thank you for taking the time to be on our podcast this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Edgar. Before we do this, I extend you an invite to come and see us and experience, the destination and our hotel. And then we're going to have, even better discussion. Absolutely.
Oh, that'd be great. How about we just plan on doing a live show there from property? That'd probably be even better. So, George, thank you for the the great content. And to all of our listeners and readers out there, you know the drill, thehotelguide.com. Follow us, subscribe, like. This is some great information here. We'll have the websites in the show notes as well, so you can contact the properties if you want to stay out there as well. But as I like to always say, travel, make memories. And until next time, everybody, take care.